can you talk about some of the, minor road bumps you've hit, some of the major roadblocks you've encountered, and if you've overcome them, how you overcame them? So we'll go back to Scarlett.
Okay, so because I was representing, I guess, the idea stage, a lot of it was all in my head at first. So the first thing that I had to do was get it all written down outside of my notes in my phone, because that can only take you so far. So I had it, I started making like little binders of things for Trieste and doodling all over them, and, keeping all my research organized on the different types of fabrics that would work best, working with trying to figure out where I would want them produced, the specific nitty-gritty things about making a product and starting product development. So then I found someone to work with for a pattern. So you have to, you can't just you can just send sketches places, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a very specific design. So I need to be really involved in the process. So I worked with this woman in Philly, and she and I sat together for 4 hours, and we pounded out a pattern for a suit. We made a size measurement sample, and we sewed it together, and I got to learn. I didn't just send it away. I got to sit there and learn how to do it. So my biggest roadblock is now finding a production company, because I have a very specific one for my design. It's hard to, I spoke with a company in Indonesia, and they were like, yeah, just send your sketches over, pictures of it, and then, they'll mass produce it. Well, it's not going to be as simple as just, let's mass produce it, because pictures, just sending a photo has such a margin for error, and they could interpret something differently than the way I want it to be. And then, I have a bulk order come in of things that I don't want. So I ixnayed that, and I moved on, and, I'm contacting companies that are in California, and some that are in Miami, and some that are in New York. And it's just, I haven't quite settled on a production company yet, but that's the roadblock that I'm currently at. But it's just, you just got to keep going at it. You just can't stop, because otherwise you're not going to get anywhere. So.
No, it's absolutely true. I mean, one of the best things about being an entrepreneur is you have full creative control. You want to do something, you go out and do it. It's your choice. It's your option. You can find the partner. You can hire the employee. You make all the command decisions. But that's simultaneously the terrifying thing. You can't rely on anyone else to do things for you. If you work in a big corporation, you've got your little piece of the puzzle, and then the puzzle all comes together. As an entrepreneur, you're responsible for the entire puzzle. And I would say in terms of my business, one of the speed bumps we hit was we're a technology-based company. We've got to build a website. We're building an Apple app and an Android app. And you've got this idea in your head of what you want it to become, but you have to be the one to push it to fruition. So, for us, the challenge is making sure you find a development partner who can help understand what you actually want and turn it into a viable product. So my advice would be, if you're going to go entrepreneur, make sure the folks you're working with, whether it's producing a swimsuit or building an app or running a technology platform, are folks that understand what your vision is, because they're the ones that are actually going to help you translate into reality.
Yeah, so actually one of the lessons that I actually learned was learning how to bootstrap from the start. So bootstrapping is very important when it comes to early stage technology startup and any startup in general, because a lot of people think that you need marketing budget and a lot of different other costs that you would need to run a startup. But majority of successful entrepreneurs that I talk to, they start their companies with $100 in their pocket. And by negotiating with your suppliers, so for example, my company, the main thing that I need is actually data. So we need to license data from Twitter and Facebook, and these cost money. So we had to figure out a way to actually negotiate a really good deal, which we wouldn't have to pay the cash up front. So learning how to bootstrap and negotiating, that's one of the critical things that you would need when you're doing a startup.
Great, thanks. And I think that's an important point. There's a lot of new developments in entrepreneurship, and particularly entrepreneurship education. And one of it is this idea of effectual entrepreneurship. Instead of the traditional way, causal, where you have some goal, and then you write a business plan, and then you raise money and assemble resources and implement it and then manage it. It's figuring out what you could do with your current means, with what you have, and who you are and who you know. And I think it's particularly valuable to young entrepreneurs and students that don't have a lot of resources. But the idea is just get going. Don't try to predict the future, because it's unpredictable. Control what you can. Don't be turned off by surprises or bad events. Use the lemonade principle. If life gives you lemons, make lemonades, and just figure out how to find partners and weave a quilt. So regarding money, time and money, it always takes much, much more of both than you would think. Could you, and it's also hard for people to contemplate what some of those costs are, especially commercially, things are much more expensive than they are on the consumer side. So can you talk about some of the things where you thought it would only take so much time and cost so much money, and it takes much more time and money, and any specific examples you could give to share, like, some costs that were much higher than you thought, or just other surprises around time and money to get something done?
Yeah, so resources, we learned this in economics, that resources are always limited, and you have to figure out how you're going to allocate them best. So when I was beginning this, I was trying to figure out, when I won the grant, actually, I didn't jump and say, okay, I'm going to make my first purchase yet or anything. I kind of waited for a little bit. And this far, I've only spent a little over $200. And I think I was speaking with someone earlier, and they're like, only $200? And I was just like, because the bigger costs are down the road, and I know that. So I'm really trying to pinch my pennies now so that I can be able to make the bigger costs later. So something that really surprised me was, when you want to go, you could go to somewhere in New York City. I'm sure there's a place that you could just walk in with your tech pack and your patterns, and you can say, hi, I'd like this fabric, and could you make this for me? And they could make one, and it would probably be very expensive because they're just making one and it's specialized. But, you go to a production company and they have minimum order quantities. So that was a big, big thing that I was all over for, where, when I was searching different production companies, that was my little buzzword that I was looking for was how many, and you want a lower amount because I'm trying to specialize and test out the suits too. So there were companies, the companies overseas, they were like a 600 minimum order quantity for just the top of the suit, and then it's another 600 for the bottom of the suit. So now you're looking at the prices are going to add up when I just want 20 pieces maybe to start off with, because I need to make sure that I can get it to my target consumer. And so the minimum order quantity was a big, because that's going to all add up price wise. So if it's $32 a piece, I'm looking at most of the scholarship there. So I really had to make sure that I could pay attention to the, finer details of what these production companies are asking for, because when you have a lot of investors, it's not as much of an issue, because you can just, you can handle the higher order quantities. But because I'm starting up and I'm using this grant and I'm trying to allocate the money the best way I can, I really need to pay attention to that. So that was definitely something that surprised me, but I kind of tackled, and I'm working on that now. So.
The first thing I recommend is make sure when you think about what your business is going to do and where you want to go, make sure you have a really good budget to account for all the costs you're going to incur. If you're not good at budgeting, find a friend, buy them a couple of drinks, have them do it for you, preferably using mudclubs.com, shameless plug. Everything will cost twice as much as you think, and it'll take twice as long as you think it should. It's an unfortunate reality. And if it turns out it doesn't, that's a wonderful surprise and you have more money left over. But my advice is figure out what you think it'll cost, put in a buffer, plan for it to be more, and it'll take longer. And that way, when things don't go perfectly, because they won't, you'll still be okay, and your idea can still get off the ground. So many entrepreneurial ideas die because you get 80% of the way to the goal and you just run out of money or you run out of time. So first piece of advice is make sure you budget it out and you give yourself some leeway. In terms of, for my business, what I'd recommend is shopping around. The first development firm I went to design a wrap told me it was going to cost $120,000 to develop the technology. I went around, I found an old fraternity brother, and I said, I need your help. I need you to point me in a better direction, because this is never going to get off the ground if it's going to cost me $120,000. And he shopped around for me, and we did some interviews, and we found a shop that did it for now $35,000. So my advice is, if you do get sticker shock at some point, make sure that you reassess your options, go out, do the shopping, do the negotiating, and make sure that you're getting your full value for your money, because your budget's probably going to be one of the most scarce resources you're going to have as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so one of the toughest time loss is actually trying to release the perfect product. So that's one of the downfalls we had at Accern, one of the major downfall. So we were trying to make the product as perfect as possible, and that took a lot of time. So we keep improving. We thought of new features, and we try to add those new features. The thing is, if you release your product really fast, even though it's all buggy and it looks like crap, you're going to get feedback from the customer, and those customers are going to tell you what they're looking for and what they would pay for. So if you can, release your product as soon as possible, even though it looks like crap, and get feedback from your customer and improve on your product and improve and release. So do this really fast, and you're going to get a really good product that people are going to want to pay for right away.
So that's a really good point, and it brings me to one of the second new developments in entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship education that's very, very recent, and that's, if you heard the book, The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, or The Startup Owner's Manual by Steve Blank. It's this whole process of customer development as opposed to product development, and it's incredibly important. And what the basis is that a startup is not a small version of a big company. And it's also not a larger version of a small business. In a way, it's an experiment or a temporary organization, not if something can be done, but should it be done. Companies go out of business, not only, as John said, because they run out of money, but because there's no customers for what they want. So what the last thing Kumesh said is really, really important. So many people, they think they know what is needed. But as we say, there's no answers in the classroom. You have to get out and talk to people. Don't sit around a spreadsheet and a PowerPoint and try to develop this. Get something out there, what we call a minimal viable product, in customers' hand, because you have to validate two things. One is the customers, who's actually using this and their problem, and two, the solution that you're offering actually addresses their problem. Now, if Ford's going to introduce a new car, they know the pricing, they know the distribution channels, they know the features, they know how they're financed, they know how they're repaired. But if you have a truly new startup, you don't know who the customer is. You don't know how they use it. You don't know what features they want. You don't know how they buy it. You don't know who's influencing the decision. There's 100 things you don't know. So it's really, really important to get out of the building and talk to customers, not do surveys, but as Kumesh said, get something, even if it's a buggy initial product, something in their hands to get feedback. And then you either, proceed or, pivot if you need to change something. So great point. We talked about some of the challenges and roadblocks and how things cost a lot more. How about some of the pleasant surprises along your entrepreneurial journey? Some, great people you met, some, wonderful mentors, some great vendors, something that went better than you thought, serendipity?
So I was actually fortunate to a family friend of ours that I had never actually met her before, but my mom knew her, and her name's Tracy, and she's kind of been my wingman ever since I guess probably about a month and a half ago. And I was looking for, after I had completed, when I found out that I won the contest, I was right before finals were starting, and I was like, okay, so it doesn't begin until January. I'm going to get through finals, and then I'm going to, get started. So I was looking for somewhere that I could go to work hand in hand to try and make, a pattern. Like I had mentioned before, I want to be really involved in the process rather than just sending my sketches away. And when my mom had mentioned something about this woman, she's like, oh, well, she made her own wedding dress. And I was like, that's kind of cool. And then my mom, I had looked her up on LinkedIn, and I did a little stalking and found out that she had worked and dabbled with Free People and did some of their intimates there, and Urban Outfitters. And she had a little bit of expertise in various different categories. So I spoke with her, and we wound up linking up just over email at first, and I sent her everything and what my company was about and what I was going for. And she was like, let's meet up, come back to, because I'm from Philadelphia. So she's like, come to Philly, and we can do all this together. And so I was in my other research, I was looking to see how much it generally costs to make a pattern, and it was somewhere around like $150 per hour. And so I spent 4 hours with Tracy working and making this pattern and constructing a sample, and she it would only, I think, tallied up to be $175. So that was not only just was it a price thing that I was a positive, but I have that connection. And I was texting her all afternoon today because we were talking about different production companies, and so she's like a friend and a pal that I'm working with. And then at the same time, she's also an entrepreneur because she has started out her own business. So I'm getting advice from her about different things that she has come up with in her business that it's a little different than she's working with like retail and stuff. But just from an entrepreneurial perspective, she's been a good advisor along the way, and I can definitely see us working together throughout the future of my company. So she was kind of like a angel sent from heaven for me because I was kind of stuck, and then she fixed a lot of my problems, and we've been working together ever since. So that was a really great connection that I had.
So I think one positive, kind of in the same vein, is when you go out and you meet folks and you're meeting with your marketing person, you're meeting with your development person, and you see people get excited about your idea. You see people all of a sudden start investing part of themselves in your idea and your concept as an entrepreneur, and that's really fun. I mean, you work for a big company, and you get through the end of the year and you hit your financial results, and maybe you get a small bonus, you get a pat on the back, but there's nothing really like watching someone attach themselves to what you want to do and what gets you excited in your company and what your product's going to be. So I think, for myself, this development firm that I'm working with, they've been incredible. And I can email this guy at 2 o'clock in the morning, he'll get back to me 15 minutes later, because he's not just doing this because I'm his client. He wants to be a part of my business going forward, and he thinks it's a great idea. And every time he walks into a bar, he pitches our product, and he's already lined up 5 customers for me. And this is not obviously what an expectation is of a development firm. So I think one of the big positives you'll find is if you decide to go out and do entrepreneurship, you watch the people who you work with rally behind your idea, and utilize those friendships. You make the most of them. You're going to give back to them, and they're going to give to you, and those relationships are a real big positive of being an entrepreneur and owning your own business.
So actually getting my first customer was the best part of the startup. It started when the first customer, you actually need a really good website. So if you're doing a startup, you need to create a really good website that markets your product. So what we did at Accern was we created a really good website that showed like we were making millions of dollars, but this time it was just me and my co-founder in the basement. And pretty much the largest hedge fund in New York City saw our website and reached out to us, and he was like, "Do you guys have a product?" Well, not a product. He actually asked, "Can we get a trial of your product?" And this time we didn't even have a product. It was all Photoshop and a website. I just looked at my co-founder and I was like, "Okay, what do we do? This is like the head of the largest hedge fund in New York City. What are we going to say to him?" So we basically told him, "Hey, we don't have a product, but we know how to build this. We have the resources and basically the technical team to do this." We didn't have any of that, but we just said that, and the guy was like, "Okay, sure. I'll prepay for your product." You can use this cash. So he basically prepaid for our product, and we used that cash to actually build out the product itself. It was a lot of negotiation because the cash for the product, it was like a 5-figure deal. But the product, to actually build that product, it for an actual company to build out that entire thing, it would take like 6 figures. So we had to negotiate like crazy, negotiate our data deal. So our data deal was like $150,000, and we had to negotiate that down to $5K. It took like weeks to do that, but we did it. And we built the product and give it to the hedge funds, and the hedge fund basically tested out. They saw that it was valuable, and then they signed a contract with us. And we were super happy because they were our first customer, but it took a lot of work. And then after that, so while we were building the product for the hedge fund, though, we were asking the guy for feedback. We were getting lots of feedback from the guy. He didn't tell us exactly what to do or what product to build. We just asked him the right questions, and he helped us navigate that way to a good product that he would actually use. And then we got feedback from other guys too. And so we built a really good minimum viable product that someone would be willing to pay for. And as we're talking to more customers, we're improving on that product and getting more sales along the way. So, yeah.
Great. Thanks. No, and that I mean, it's just a perfect example of you don't have to wait for the perfect opportunity. You don't have to wait till you are able to raise money from a VC. It's, who you are, what you know, and whom you know. And look at the way they leverage that creatively to get going. So one of the a tough thing in entrepreneurship, it's always hard to get started and hard to grow, but particularly hard to scale and keep getting to the next level. Because, a small business is basically start small, but it's designed to stay small, mainly to support the lifestyle of the owners. I had a small business called Annapolis Maritime Corp. I also had a high-growth entrepreneurial venture called Annapolis Maritime. So one thing in entrepreneurial ventures is that idea that you have some basis of sustainable competitive advantage, an inherently scalable business model, and you're able to grow this. So can you talk a little bit, and I know, Scott, you're at the very early stage, but kind of what will it take to get to that next level in terms of, resources, money, and other types of resources and time? And again, I know it's very early, but what do you think that next level is, and what the challenges of getting to that next level are?
So as of right now, the immediate next level would be my finding a production company, getting suits made, testing it out, and working on just having a product in my hands, right? So I can tell as many people I want about this, and I can speak as energetic about it as I am, but it's not as that's great for people to want to follow, but they don't have that in their hands. They can't say, oh, I see what you mean, this makes sense, or try it on and be like, oh my gosh, this really does work. So that's the immediate next level. But for the future, it's definitely going to be working on trying to get resources to keep the company going. So yes, I can use the grant to prove my concept that I can make this suit work. But then I'm going to have to, I'm running a company, and I'm running a swimwear line, and I'm going to have to keep coming up with new patterns and designs to, keep with the fashion, because that's another key part of the company, that it's fashionable and athletic. So just staying on top of it. And I think that it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of energy. It's going to take a lot of passion, but I have all of those things. So I really think that, it's easy for me to be optimistic in it because it's myself and I know myself, but it's going to be a long road, but I'm really excited. And I don't see, someone else was asking if I thought that I would take this for the rest of my life. And I said, for sure. I said, this is kind of like a little baby of mine that I'm just going to go with it. And I'm just really excited to watch it grow as a company. And not only just the swimwear line itself, but as a brand for myself to be able to market to people and consumers.
So for my business that's now about to launch our product and start generating revenue, when we look forward, you have to understand the business doesn't just grow. It's not a linear relationship. It's a step function. They happen in phases. For ourselves, we're looking at, okay, well, what do we need to sell in order just to manage our overhead? Make sure we have certain bills we have to pay every month. We have certain third parties we work with. So what do we need to make sure that every month we can write those checks? And so for us, it's the first 10 to 15 customers. Once we have those folks on board, we know that we're going to have enough money to keep the lights on, as it were. And then at that point, you start thinking about, okay, well, what incremental investments can I make to get to 50 customers? And then, okay, well, now I'm going to hire a couple of full-time people, and they can push me to 250 customers. And maybe at that point, we invest some capital, and we generate, a new product or a new app, or we make a big upgrade. So for us, it's really thinking about what are the next 3 steps I need to hit in order to be commercially viable for the long haul, to know that this business is going to exist beyond 6 months out. And for us, I think once we hit our first 100 customers, that's enough that I could pay myself a salary, we can continue to invest in the product, and then you can kind of grow from there. So I would say if you're going to start out as an entrepreneur, kind of think through what that minimum number of customers you need are to be viable. Because if you look at, okay, well, if I need 100 folks just to keep the lights on every month, you may need to rethink your strategy, because it's going to take a long time to grow to that extent.
So 2015, which was a few months, last year, it was a good year. So we went from 0 to 6 figures in revenues. And now we're actually launching a new product. So it's basically a data visualization product. It basically, you're able to visualize the entire world, how people are talking about certain types of companies or events or products, anything that you want. You can just type this into the platform and you're going to be able to visualize what people are saying. Millions of articles compressed into visual charts. So we're actually launching this product, doing a product launch next week. And so we didn't launch the product officially in the market yet, but we already have paying customers. We just released a very ugly looking product. We didn't release the product, but we just showed it to a few customers, and they were really excited to actually use it. We told them that they can't get access to it until we released like the full product, but they were like, no, we want access to it right now, and we would be willing to pay for it. So we ended up signing 2 hedge funds like a couple days ago. So what our next steps is for as a growth stage startup is actually releasing this product, making a big launch, and getting a few more customers. So a few more customers that would be interested in the product, and we would increase our valuation of the company. The more revenues you get, the more your company gets valued, the higher your valuation increases, and the more attractive that looks for VC. So our main focus going forward for Accern in the next 2 or 3 months is to get as much sales as possible, no matter what. And once we get that sales and we're showing that traction, as we're getting more customers and more revenues, if we show that traction lining up, we can easily take that to VCs, or VCs would actually come to you and be willing to invest. So in the next 6 months, probably summer, we're going to probably raise a large round and try to get more workers, more employees, and build out the team and expand it and try to go global with that. So, yeah.
Great. That I participated in something called the National Science Foundation Innovation Course, or I-Course. It was developed by the NSF to help particularly university professors commercialize technology and figure out this discovery-driven, this search process of figuring out what the problem and the solution is by getting out and talking to people. I was an industry mentor from a team from City College, and when they talk about when you do these interviews, the dream is to say, to go to someone, describe your product and say, we want it. You can't leave until we could, sign up for a trial version, test it, get it to us. Here's the money, please. And I don't know that any of the teams experienced that when I went through this program, but it's great to hear about that. And by the way, when we did this, this turns out to be the 3rd year we're doing this Entrepreneurs Roundtable with Loughlin entrepreneurs. It wasn't originally started to be an annual program, but I just thought I'd point out the first year, a few other successful PACE alumni entrepreneurs. We had 3 people on the panel. David Arabov, who immigrated to the U.S., took English as a second language, and thought that millennials, you guys 20-something-year-olds, need another news source. How many of you guys have heard of Elite Daily or use Elite Daily? That was started here at PACE a couple years ago. He just sold it for $55 million. Lenny Karatonov, also an immigrant, he came to PACE and he always liked furniture, and he decided 3 years ago he's going to start selling furniture online, trying to figure out the logistics of delivery. He's now doing over $1 million a month, mmmason.com. And the third person, Craig Tashman, actually did a degree in physics at PACE. He went on to do an MS at I think RPI, and then his PhD in human-computer interface at Georgia Tech. And he released an app. It was also just released at the Apple Store. He had a demonstration. Apple named it the most innovative iPad app of the year. And it's called Liquid Text. You can go to liquidtext.net. If you remember Tom Cruise in Minority Report, the way he was able to just move text around on that big glass screen is something he actually did. And then last year we had, around the Ted and Pat Levine Proof of Concept initiative, there were 4 finalists, and it was neat. They were all 4 were women from 4 different schools at PACE, and we had them on the panel and doing some really interesting things. So with that, talking about PACE, is there something you found particularly helpful or valuable at PACE, a course, a mentor, a classmate, a teacher, a program, an alumni connection?
Yeah, definitely. So,
And it's not a plug for me, though.
well, I wouldn't be here without you. So, this fall when I was talking to my advisor that I spoke of earlier, Eileen Murphy. We had emailed back and forth because my original advisor from last year had left. So I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to meet a new advisor and go through the whole spiel again of what I'm going for in school and everything. And I met with Eileen, and she was just this like ray of sunshine, and she was so awesome. And she was like, well, what do you like? What do you like? And I was like, I like a lot of things. And like, I'm one of those people that I want to involve myself in like everything. So I told her like, with my swimming, and then I told her about, I like marketing. I'm not really a big math person. I'm more creative. And then we were talking more, and then I had mentioned my bathing suit idea, and she's like, well, wait, what's that? And then I explained it to her, and she was like, well, this is kind of cool. Like, you should definitely go and talk to. And she hooked me up with Professor Bachenheimer. And so when I met with him, he told me to, again, apply for the grant. And I definitely, I wouldn't have even known about it if it hadn't been for the connection with Miss Murphy and then Professor B. And then my third connection is my professional planning and practice professor. Her name is Professor Maxine Sugarman, and I'm not sure if any of you guys you may have taken the course. I think it's Business 255. I'm not positive. And it's just a course where you do your resume, you make your career handshake account, you make a LinkedIn. It's just getting you prepared for the professional life. And I sat through that class, and I really enjoyed it because we practiced interviewing, we practiced presenting our resumes with our 30-second pitches for when we go to the career service events. And it just really made me more from just being a college student to someone that's getting ready to go out and get internships and, be in the real world. And so between, the three of you guys, it's just been amazing because I've had a lot of, whether we're emailing back and forth or meeting, they've been really helpful along the way. And it's just been, a good experience overall and using PACE as a resource.
Here comes the shameless plug. The Entrepreneurship Lab is an incredible resource here at PACE. I was a graduate assistant there for 18 months, 3 semesters, and there's technology there, computers, software you can use, fax, copy. They have a media production lab. They have folks who work there who can help you with financial planning, who can help you create videos to advertise your product. Professor Bachenheimer is an incredible resource. Nikhil's an incredible resource. If you're going to be a PACE student who wants to get into entrepreneurship, I highly recommend you check out the lab. They have programming like this. And, as I said before, one of the number one killers of entrepreneurial ventures is the fact that they can't afford to move forward. And you really should make sure that you get value for everything you pay for. And if you're a student here and you can get all access to all these people and these resources, expertise for free as part of your tuition, it's an incredible head start. So I'd highly recommend that for any of you who are thinking about going down this path.
Yeah, I'll second John on that as well. So we actually started Accern, the E-Lab too. And the E-Lab, they have the best resources that's there. So instead of just going to the PACE campus, I was just in the E-Lab all the time. We had really good mentors like Nikhil. And the PACE E-Lab, they offer different types of competitions. So for example, the PACE pitch competition, which I participate in, that was one of the best competition that I went to. And it gave you lots of good feedback on what pitfalls your startup might have based on so the judge would give you lots of different feedbacks, and you would gain that experience to pitch in front of a crowd, and actually pitch in front of real VCs as well. So it's a really good resource.
Great, thanks. That's what makes it all worthwhile. And speaking of quick plugs, on the back of your program, there's 4 dates that may be of interest. One is we have a lot of money to give out, and we often can't find students to give it to. So, for example, we have 3 endowed scholarships just for entrepreneurship students. One of them, the deadline is February 29th, 2 $2,000 scholarships, and we only have 1 submission. So come on. The other thing we have is the PACE Mobile App Design Contest and Hackathon. That's on March 11th, something Nikhil started a couple years ago and expanded it to, if you don't know anything about mobile app development, it's fine. We have this hackathon. You come in, In the morning, we provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you come in knowing nothing, and at the end of the day, you have a working mobile app, and then you can enter the competition. And again, we give out money. And this last year, I wasn't sure how many people would come in or stay. We had 25 people, 15 women, 10 men, 8 teams. They all had working apps at the end. And we have people from Microsoft there as mentors, and Seidenberg we do it in partnership with. So that's on March 11th. The 12th annual pitch contest. One year we gave out for a 3-minute pitch over $50,000 in cash. And we had teams from Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, MIT, NYU, Columbia, et cetera. This year we've made it just, or the last few years, just pay students. But again, that's $1,000 first prize, $500 second, $250 third, and a chance to get some good publicity. As you can see below, we've been in, on TV, in the Wall Street Journal, in magazines and newspapers very regularly. The last one, the business plan competition, is another activity that, if you're looking to actually do it, and having won the 12th annual PACE business plan competition may look good on a funding application. So with that, one of the things I thought was interesting, I saw it at a panel discussion. As I said, I'm on the board of the MIT Enterprise Forum. We had an event up at Microsoft, and there was panelists from Google and all, and the moderator did something that was interesting, and that was have the panelists ask each other a question. So I want to try that today. So, I'm sure Scarlett and John may have a question for Kumesh, who's built the business. Kumesh may have a question about some early success that Scarlett and John has. So why don't I open up? We'll start with Scarlett. Come up for a question for either John or Kumesh. Okay. Or me, I guess.
Yeah, so obviously, because I'm in such the beginning phases of everything, I could probably come up with 1,000 questions to pick your brain on how to be successful and how to get things going. But one thing that I had received advice that was like, don't listen to anyone. And you're like, okay, like, what do you mean don't listen to anyone? And, you're going to have your yes people that are like, oh, this is a great idea. And like, your mom that's like, oh, that's awesome. I think it's really going to work. And she's just being your mom. And then there's people that are like, oh, that'll never work. Like, I don't know why you're even going to try. So I don't know if you guys have had like substantial advice along the way that you have listened to, and how has it like affected your venture? So like negative or positive.
So I think in my example, what I would suggest is, go out and use your network as much as you can. There's social media, there's Twitter, you've got Pace University with professors and with other students, and advice is free. And I think, make sure you find the folks who are willing to be honest with you. But I would almost value the bad feedback above the good feedback. Mm-hmm. Take your idea, push it forward, make your dream your own. But the folks who are the ones who are willing to tell you they don't think a certain thing's a good idea, right. That's what I'd value the most. And that's the things you should consider as you move forward.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, so at the early stage of Accern, so you need to listen to your customers. Mm-hmm. So wait 1 second. Yeah. So you need to listen to your customers. The early stage of Accern, we had the idea, mm-hmm. and we went out and started pitching to VCs. Okay. And you don't want to listen to VCs as an early stage startup because they're just going to take you all over the place. They're going to say, this is never going to work, go to this direction, go to this direction. And we're like pivoting like millions of times. And they're not your customer. So you shouldn't put too much importance on what they say right then. Mm-hmm. If you go to your customers and talk to your customers and listen to what they have to say, that's the feedback that you need. If you're going and pitching this to a VC without actually having any real customer, you're going to go all over the place. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
And John?
Yeah. So I have a question for Kumesh, since you're out there now and you're selling. As you move forward, I'm sure there's every day 1,000 things you have to do to continue to grow your business and improve your product. After you hit the phase of getting your first customer or two, what were the 2 things you prioritized the most in terms of how to push the business in the right direction as quickly as possible?
Right. So getting our first customer and getting that first large check, we had to start budgeting. So we had to figure out a way and how we can set up so we had to set up a forecast. How much can this cash get us? And what major milestone can we hit by using this cash? if we can hit a major milestone in the next 2 months by using this cash, then we'll do it. If we can hit a major milestone, if it takes like 6 months to hit a major milestone, we'll have to bootstrap and budget that cash for that specific milestone. So once we got that first customer and we got the payment, instead of going to VCs and telling VCs, hey, we just got a first customer, we got like a large check, we want to get more customers and to increase our valuation and to be more attractive to VCs. But so far, we basically bootstrap all the way to revenues, and budgeting was important.
Thank you.
So so a question for you guys is, how many times have you guys pivoted so far?
So for those of you who are not familiar with the terminology, you're going to have your idea and you think this is the greatest thing in the world and I'm going to go do it and I'm going to get rich, right? And then you get 5 steps out the door and you realize, oh God, that's never going to work. And you shift in this direction. And then you get a little further and realize, oh God, that's not going to work. And you shift back. Entrepreneurship is not a straightforward walk. You're the mouse running around the maze trying to find the cheese. So for myself, we had this idea to create an app and a website, which was great, but the app has changed 10 times since we started. And we used the money we got from the Ted and Pat Levine grant to create an additional product in addition to our mug clubs. It's a basic loyalty program like your Starbucks punch card. And, we got feedback from our customers. Listen, we don't have 100 beers on tap. How are you going to make this useful to me? So we took that advice in. So I think we've probably pivoted 10 to 15 times. And I'm sure if we're successful, there'll be hundreds more along the way.
Yeah, that's around the right number.
So I'm very, very picky, I guess. And when I was originally sitting down and drawing up sketches, I had made 3, I guess, basic cuts of the suit. And when I was looking for someone to make a pattern for it, I was showing them and they were like, all right, well, when you're looking at this, then you're looking at, it's not just 3 suits that you're looking at. That's 6 different styles, so 6 different minimum order quantities, that whole spiel. And I had to kind of reevaluate. So I didn't totally change everything, but I had to pick which, prioritize and say, okay, so maybe I can't go for all of this right away, but I'm going to have to prioritize on which I think is going to suit the customer best. And I kind of picked my favorite top and then my favorite bottom, and then we went from there. So I didn't totally do I haven't done major pivots yet, but I've done a lot of little alterations that I had to kind of pick and choose so I can make the best of what is to come, if that makes sense.
Okay. And we're amazingly right on time. But just before we open it up to the audience for Q&A, and we have a microphone, and again, we'll take questions by Twitter. Questions by Twitter are great because, not in this audience, but in some audiences, people try to get in a plug for something. I don't know if people got to see Damon John from Shark Tank was just here, and sometimes the questions are more of a statement and an advertisement. With Twitter, they're great because you got to keep it short and you could preview them. And by the way, with Damon John, one of the lessons that he kept talking about is he wished he understood finance more. He just kept talking about how many times he got in trouble with finance and cash flow, even through the biggest successes. So pay attention in finance and accounting. It's actually quite helpful. But before we open it up for questions, which will just be in a moment, you want to any kind of closing thoughts on the good, the bad, and the ugly of your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, it's going to have the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I guess it's just going to be a roller coaster, and I'm really excited for it. But I definitely just, everyone's like, oh, the American dream, and this is kind of it, creating something from the beginning, making something happen that you're so passionate about, and just chasing after it, because there's so many people that think that you can't do things, and then just go out there and not prove them wrong for to prove them wrong, but for yourself, because you knew that you could do it. And I guess that's what the ultimate goal that I'm excited for, because I'm not only creating a product that I'm going to use, I'm creating a product that I know my friends are going to use, and a whole targeted consumer will benefit from. And having that light at the end of the tunnel is going to make it all worth it, because in the end, it's not just something that just myself is going to use. I'm going to be walking down the beach and I could maybe see someone else in one of my suits, and just, a little sense of pride in that. So that's what I'm excited for.
Yes, I'll do the ugly, the bad, and the good. I'll keep it positive at the end. The ugly is, to be truthful, it's all on you. It's your enterprise, it's your idea. If it fails, it's your fault. If it succeeds, that's the good part. But I think you have to be prepared for the world to come crashing down around you. But if you're willing to take that risk, it's really a lot of fun. I spent 8 years in corporate finance at Johnson & Johnson. I'm having a hell of a lot more fun running a bar and running mugclubs.com than I ever did doing corporate finance at a Fortune 50 company. So the good is, when it goes well, you get to enjoy the success. You get to live in the limelight of it, and it's a totally different feeling to watch your dream come to fruition than watch someone else's dream come to fruition. And just a quick moment too, I want to recognize my wife Heather's here, and my grandfather, who was a PACE alumni of 1954. So I just wanted to give them a round of applause. He's the one who looks a little bit older than the rest of you. Now they're embarrassed. No, I'm going to hear about this later.
So the good is the sky's the limit, so you can do whatever you want as an entrepreneur. As long as you have the right vision in mind, stick to that vision, and you can go as far as possible. The bad is a lot of people are going to try to bring you down, so you have to stick to your vision. You're going to have a lot of conflicts, a lot of negotiation. A lot of people are going to try to change your vision and all these things. So you got to stick to it. Believe that that is what you want to do. Believe that your customer actually need this, and go for it. And the ugly is that if you run out of cash, you're screwed. So try to budget and bootstrap as much as possible, because if you, out of the blue, you just hired like a whole entire team, and the team is your core component to actually building your startup and keeping your company running, and then you just run out of cash to pay them, you're kind of screwed right there. So budget well.
Okay.